Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hypnobirthing podcast. I'm Claire, and if you are new around here, I am a doula, hypnobirthing teacher, and birth coach, and I'm really glad to have you here. Just a quick reminder before we start, if you are preparing for birth and looking for support, then you can find the details of my hypnobirthing courses and my doula support in the show notes. And there's also links to my website, my book that I have as well on positive birth stories, and also my Instagram where I'm really active, always chatting all things birth over there as well. Today, I'm doing a solo episode of the podcast, and I actually want to talk about something that I know can have a huge impact on how people experience birth. And that is understanding how to advocate for yourself, specifically in a hospital environment, so that hopefully you feel more confident, more informed, and more in control as well. And this is a really important topic because when I speak to pregnant women, which I do a lot, one of the biggest worries that comes up, I feel, isn't often actually labour itself. Often the concern is around not feeling heard. So people tell me that they're worried that they won't know enough, or that things will happen very quickly, will happen to them, or that they'll feel pressured into decisions that they don't fully understand. Sometimes people worry that they'll be in the middle of labour and simply won't know what to say. Those worries are so understandable because hospitals can feel unfamiliar, especially if you haven't ever spent much time in one. And birth itself can already feel like a huge unknown. And then obviously when you add in the bright lights, the people coming in and out of the room, medical language, equipment making noises, and all of the emotions that naturally come with labour, it can feel like a lot and quite overwhelming. What I really want to say right at the beginning of this episode is that advocating for yourself doesn't mean being difficult. It doesn't mean arguing with healthcare professionals or going into birth expecting a battle. Sometimes people hear the phrase self-advocacy and immediately imagine confrontation, but that isn't what we're talking about at all. Advocating for yourself simply means understanding your options, feeling informed, and feeling involved in the decisions being made around your body and your baby. It means feeling like you have a voice. So why does advocacy matter? The reason advocacy matters so much is because birth environments can sometimes move very quickly. During labour, there may be conversations happening around you, suggestions being made or decisions that feel really time sensitive. And although healthcare professionals are used to these environments, for you, this might be a completely new experience. What's also really important to remember is that labour often encourages us to go inward. You'll have heard me talk so many times before about how labour works best when we feel safe, we feel calm, and we feel relaxed. And so many people enter a very focused state during labour where they naturally turn their attention inward and become less interested in the outside world. And that's completely normal. You're often concentrating on your breathing, your body, and moving through each contraction. So imagine somebody starts asking questions or presenting information while you're in that mindset. It can be difficult to process. So that's one of the reasons preparation during pregnancy can be so powerful, because learning about your options beforehand means you aren't trying to understand everything for the very first time during labour. Instead, you already have a sense of what matters to you. You already understand some of your choices and have thought about the kinds of decisions that can come up. Advocacy isn't really about fighting against a system. It's about understanding your options enough that you can make decisions that genuinely feel right for you. So something I really want everyone listening to understand is that even when you're in hospital, birth is still your experience and your body. I think sometimes people unconsciously hand over all of their power when they enter a medical setting. And I think the reason that we are inclined to do that is because when we're unwell and we go to the hospital, that's what we do because we're not well, and the medical professionals know best, seemingly, when they're dealing with people that are not very well. So it becomes one of those things that we are conditioned to do. The difference with birth is that birth is not a medical event. in general. Like in most situations, it's not medical, it's physiological. Obviously, there is the exception to that rule. Very occasionally, you will have somebody with complex medical needs during their pregnancy. But for most people, birth is actually a normal physiological function of the body. But yet we still often go into hospital setting and hand over that power. It can feel, obviously, as though professionals know best and that your role is to just agree. Of course, healthcare professionals have experience and expertise that are incredibly valuable, but that doesn't mean that your role disappears, because you still have rights. You have the right to understand what is being suggested and why. You have the right to ask questions if something doesn't feel right, or even if it does feel right, you still have the right to ask questions so that you understand it. You have the right to understand both the benefits and the risks before making decisions. You can ask for more information. You can ask whether there is an alternative, and you can ask for a few minutes to think it through. And importantly, informed consent also means informed refusal. I think sometimes people are surprised to hear that, because we are often taught to simply just follow instructions in medical environments. But informed consent means understanding your options and deciding whether something feels right for you. That doesn't mean saying no to everything. It simply means making decisions that feel informed. So just because you are taking your time to ask questions, to make a decision, it doesn't mean that the answer you're going to give is going to be no. You may well agree and you may well want that thing that is being offered, but you're doing it then with full consent and full information. I also want to reassure you that asking questions doesn't make you difficult. I think that's a bit of a worry as well. It doesn't make you difficult. It doesn't make you awkward. And it doesn't mean that you're challenging someone. It means that you are just trying to understand and find out all of the information before you make that decision. Questions are a really normal part of good care, and we should be asking questions, and medical professionals should be encouraging us to ask questions as well. One of the tools that I absolutely love teaching in my hypnobirthing courses is the BRAIN framework. And I will have talked about this on here before, but I really like it because it gives people something practical they can actually use in the moment. So when we're feeling emotional or overwhelmed, it's easy to feel put on the spot and not know what to say or what to ask. The BRAIN framework creates a little bit of space. The letters stand for benefits, risks, alternatives, intuition or instinct, and nothing. When an option is presented, you might ask what the benefits are and whether there are risks involved. You could ask if there are alternative approaches available. Then there's instinct or intuition, which I think is really important because we often forget to tune into our own feelings. Sometimes we become so focused on the information that we stop asking ourselves how we actually feel. So instinct's really important. And the final part, what would happen if nothing happened for now? Could you wait? Could you pause? Is there time? Is this an urgent decision that needs to be made straight away? So imagine, as an example, you're being offered an induction. Rather than feeling you need an immediate answer, you could use BRAIN to slow things down. You might ask why induction is being suggested now, whether there are any alternatives, or whether waiting another day changes anything. The beauty of this tool is that it creates room to breathe so that you don't need to make an immediate decision. You can take your time. It helps you move away from feeling rushed and towards feeling informed. Maybe the environment matters, maybe movement matters, maybe optimal cord clamping matters. Writing these things down can help you clarify what feels most important to you. I also think birth partners deserve much more credit because they can be one of the most powerful forms of support and advocacy during labour. When you're focusing inward, your birth partner can ask questions, remind staff of preferences, and also create a sense of calm around you. They don't need medical training, they simply need preparation and understanding. So make sure whoever is going to be your birth partner with you in that space is prepared as well. Make sure they understand the type of birth that you want. They understand why it's important to you and why things like environment's important and feeling calm and feeling respected as well. Obviously, I'm counting doulas as well as birth partners, as having a doula there can also be incredibly helpful for advocating for you and for making sure that your preferences are respected. One of the simplest and most powerful things anyone can say is, can we have a few minutes to think about that? The sentence creates breathing space. Another useful question can be asking whether something is urgent or whether there is time. Sometimes simply slowing things down changes how everything feels, and that's the thing I hear a lot of in feedback from people, is that things felt rushed or that things felt like they just happened to you, like without really understanding why. So just those simple questions of just asking, is this urgent? Do we need to make a decision straight away? And also just asking for a little bit of time to think about it just creates that chance for you to just breathe and think about what's actually being offered and whether or not you want to accept it. So also important to highlight is that advocating for yourself is not about controlling your birth, because birth doesn't always unfold exactly as we imagine, and sometimes plans change. And I think that's really evident in the birth stories on this podcast. They're all positive. They're all relayed in a really positive way. The person telling the story has had a positive birth experience, but they're all very different. And some of them are much more medical and some of them are absolutely not medical at all, but they're still positive. And sometimes people's births have changed throughout their story. So they went into birth with one plan and then some things happened and it changed. So it doesn't always unfold how we imagine it will. And sometimes interventions do become the right choice. And sometimes circumstances look different from what you expected. So advocacy isn't about making sure every detail unfolds exactly to a plan. It's about making sure that you still feel informed and respected throughout whatever happens. Because when people reflect on birth afterwards, they often talk less about specific interventions and more about how they felt. And I say this a lot, and again, you will hear this reflected in the birth stories on this podcast. Did people feel heard? Did they feel included? Did they feel involved? Those things really matter. It really matters. Like whether the end result ends up being that interventions were used and that the birth did not follow your plan. If you felt in control and informed and respected during the process of deciding if that was the correct path for you, that matters a lot. So just to finish today's episode, I just want to leave you with a thought that birth is not something that simply happens to you while everyone else takes over. You are an active participant. So your instincts matter, your feelings matter, and your voice matters. You don't need to know everything, and you do not need to advocate perfectly. Preparation, support, and understanding your options goes a really, really long way. Thank you so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed the episode, please do rate, review, subscribe. And if you know someone preparing for birth who you think might benefit from this episode, please do share it with them. And I will see you next time.